and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a really exciting beer. Have not done a beer like this in a while. On the Belgian side, we recently did a German monastic Helles lager, but today we're jumping over to a Belgian equivalent. And the brewer in question is Brouwerij St. Bernardus. They are based in the Flanders region of Belgium, specifically in Watteau. And the beer today is Prior 8. So this is what is called an abbey ale. It is brewed by, the monastery, the church, the monks at them. Only a handful of these in the world, and Brouwerij St. Bernardus is one of those. Today's beer is called Prior 8. It is a Belgian abbey ale, specifically a double, and it clocks in at 8% ABV. On the label, we can see a very happy looking monk, and why would he not be? He's got a goblet of his abbey ale in hand. So I'm going to scoop my glass to the edge of the table, take the cage off the cork. All right. And then use this towel for a good grip. Hopefully this will come right out. No problem whatsoever. Nice big pop there. Yeah, there's a reason that they use those cages and corks on these. And indeed, just like a wine, you can get a good bit of information. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's got a slight booziness to it, almost a vinous quality to it. Almost wine-like aromas coming off of that cork. So we're going to get this poured right in the old glass here. This is typically best served in a goblet. This is the closest to a true goblet shape I have. It's a little more tuliped than you would typically see. If you ordered this from a really good craft bar or German or Belgian specific bar, they would have a less intense flair, less of a tulip and more of a standard goblet, akin to the shape on the goblet in his hand, which should be relatively easy for the camera to pick up, I'm assuming. But yeah, Trappist Belgian double abbey ale. Formed a nice head here. It's that classic kind of dark caramelly brown you would expect to see on Trappist double. And this is one that kind of is akin to the color spectrum of, say, a brown ale. It's got that kind of same similar hue. Did form a nice creamy head. Let's give it a sniff here. Oh yeah. You can smell just tons of fruity accents coming off of it. There's a lot of kind of raisin aroma, kind of plum and raisin. And there's a little bit of booziness to it and a little bit of kind of a grape-like quality too. So that kind of vinous element that you can pick up just by sniffing the cork, you do get a lot of that in the glass. So it smells very much like a classic double. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. Head is holding true. Take one. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is a classic Belgian double right there. Really, really nice. Absolutely fantastic beer here. So first thing of note is the body and the texture. It's 8%. You could say only 8%, but it does have a very robust body to it. I would say that it is a strong medium heavy, right on that border. So for the ABV range, it maybe punches a little bit above its weight, but that's typical on a Belgian double. They do definitely feel like they have some heft. In terms of mouthfeel, this one does get kind of foamy. When you move it around the palate, it really just wants to expand as you're moving it around, but you can definitely feel the resistance there as well. So it feels appropriate for the ABV range. So this is very much feeling weight and texture-wise like a textbook Belgian double. And in terms of the flavor profile, a lot of the information you get on the aroma does indeed get translated directly into the glass, though the malt bill underneath it is noticeably more present than just that you get on the nose. So I wasn't really detecting any kind of caramel nuance on the nose, but in the glass it's absolutely present. And indeed that's where this beer leads. It leads with the underpinning malt bill. And it's very much a caramelly malt bill. It's got a ton of caramelly notes, but you do still get a lot of these kind of underlying fruity accents that you got on the aroma. So there is a definite kind of plum and raisin-like quality, as well as a little bit of a grape-like quality. It doesn't taste like wine in the flavor profile, as it kind of smells a bit on the cork, but there's definite grape influence there. So it's got a big, complex, robust, myriad flavors that kind of move in and out of each other, but it absolutely does lead with the underlying malt bill. Of course, this is brewed with Belgian yeast, and they proudly state on the bottle that they use Belgian hops. Which brings me to the next point of this beer. Prior 8, actually, for a Belgian double, has a far more discernible hop bite to it than your average Belgian double. So whatever their, specific volume and specific hop blends that they use, they definitely have more alpha acids in them, or they use a greater volume than you would typically find in a Belgian double, because it does have a much more noticeable hop presence and bittering bite on the front. We're not, again, talking IPA territory, just comparative to a standard Belgian double. This has a lot more hop presence to it. So a big, complex beer packed full of flavor, wonderful body, wonderful mouthfeel, a lot of excellent aroma, tons of complexity. This definitely is worthy of a second dive. I'm gonna let everything re-intensify, pick it apart again, make sure I didn't miss anything, then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. Take 2. Yeah, you get this slight booziness up front, and it immediately opens up into this slight bittering in tandem with this blossoming caramelization from the underlying malts. And you're getting a lot of that up front, and it does kind of this, over the course of about 2-3 seconds, kind of blossoms, and it holds there. And then you could almost think of it as like the blossom of the flower slowly closing back down. That's kind of the impression that I get. So it definitely leads with the malt bill, and it leads with the bitters up front. Then it starts to open up into the kind of fruity accents of the malt bill versus the caramel. And that's where you just start to get all these interesting flavor rides. So on the second sip, really nothing that I didn't catch on the first. There maybe is a slight suggestion of some apricot in the back. There's a lot of this that is going to be coming from the yeast in this beer, a lot of the flavor nuance, especially these kind of fruitier sides of it. But it's a very, very nice beer. This is probably a bit bigger and just in terms of flavor intensity than your average Belgian double. And I think probably a bit more intense bittering on the front is really what's kind of leading that impression to my palate. But it's very, very nice. And it's got a rather textbook Belgian double flavor profile outside of just leading with a bit more bitters than you would typically find. In terms of the balance, this is beautifully balanced for my money. I don't think it's overly hopped. I don't think that it's out of the norm for the style, because it's not an IPA intensity. It's just a bit more there. It's an added bonus that you get on the beer and the beer style. That's kind of my takeaway here. It's not over the top. It's just dialed up a little bit more than you would find in your typical double. And it really, really works well in this beer. So the malt bill, the selection that they made, their yeast strain, their hops, I really, really like the balance of this beer. I think that for my money, it's a better balance than your typical double. It adds a bit more nuance, a bit more layering to the beer. Absolutely takes nothing away from it. In terms of the finish, so this is a Belgian double, a Trappist double. It's a style that is big on flavor intensity, but it's not one that's known for ridiculously long finishes. I'm sure non-Trappist Belgian brewers might have some barrel-aged Belgian double variants that would, of course, extend the finish. This is a standard. They're not using whiskey barrels or anything like that. It's a standard Trappist double, and the length of the finish is longer than average, and it's owing to kind of that bittering that lingers on the back, but it's not a ridiculous amount of time. I would say it's above average, but it's not, like a spirit barrel variant would be. So overall, this is just a really, really great example of one of the great Trappist brewers in Belgium, and a really good example of how they do some of these classic Belgian beer styles. A Trappist Belgian double is an experience. Belgian doubles are always great, but to get one from one of the Trappist brewers that's been doing this for hundreds of years, you know, just like their German equivalents, they have perfected the craft over a long time. It really doesn't get much better than this, guys. I absolutely love this beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Brouwerij St. Bernardus' Prior 8, a Trappist Belgian double that clocked in at 8% ABV. St. Bernardus is based in Watteau in Belgium, in the Flanders region specifically. So this was a really, really great beer, guys. I've been fortunate to have a majority of the beer offerings from most of the Trappist brewers over the years. Indeed, this is one I have had, I think, all of their beer offerings, but I've never reviewed this on their channel, and it's probably been 10, 15 years since I've had this beer. So I definitely wanted to bring it to the attention of anybody watching this that maybe has never tried one. Nonetheless, this is a very, very good beer. Another one that almost swept it across the board. It's just a truly great example of what a Trappist Belgian double is about. So a solitary category that did not get a perfect score. We're just going to jump to the category in question, and that was the finish. The finish on this was absolutely above average. No question about it. And on this specific beer, it was kind of the slightly more intensive bitters that drove it out. But indeed, there are other Trappist doubles that are longer, even without you know, any barrel aging or anything like that. They don't do that at the monasteries. Of course, you could get a non-Trappist double that could have everything under the sun done to it. But for the purposes of comparing a Trappist double to Trappist double and keeping it the same, yes, there are some with longer finishes. But this one is above average. And in this specific beer, it really is that slight more intensity from the hops and the hop bittering that does drive it out. So the finish on this one does get a 7 out of 10. And that leaves a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 9 categories. That's aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling/intangible, and example of style. So the total score on Brouwerij St. Bernardus Prior 8 is, of course, a 97 out of 100. Guys, this is top tier. This is one of those just, you have to try it at least once. You have to try it at least once. And if you do, you're probably going to come back to it. It's not a cheap beer, but it's not a ridiculously expensive beer either. Obviously, you know, there's smaller batch, they're imported. So over here for a bottle of this size, depending on where you're buying it, it's going to be somewhere between $10 and $20 a bottle. I'm guessing it's cheaper if you live in Europe, perhaps if you live in Belgium in particular. But, you know, for the size of the bottle and what it is, it's a small price to pay. It truly is a world-class example of a Trappist double, and it is one of my favorites. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications by hitting that bell icon. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.